Hey, what's up, you guys? It's Aces High. Today we're hopping back into I guess my main series, my main history series. It's going to be Romans. We've been working on Romans for quite a while. It's been a long series, but I've really learned a lot, seriously, from everything way back with just the basic rules of how the Senate worked and the walls and just how generals' laws worked and everything like that, all the way up until the point now where Caesar's taking over. We know how Caesar's life ends. I believe this series also gets into Augustus a little bit, so I'm excited about that. I think there's about 10 more videos in the series before we move on to the next one. But today is going to be the Battle of Munda, 45 BCE. It's another video by Historia Civilis, and I'm kind of excited for it. I was looking ahead in the playlist, and it looks like it's only about two videos until Caesar's assassination. So he's gonna rise to his height, I guess, pretty soon. He's already pretty close, honestly. Hey, if you guys are new to the channel, make sure you hit that like button, hit that sub button. I do post videos every single day, and leave me a comment with what you want to see. I can't get to every single video, but I'm really trying. And like I mentioned the last couple days, I'm working on getting a Discord server up. That way that you guys can just drop your links in there, and it keeps it more organized. Anyway, I'm gonna sit back. I'm gonna shut up. Grab yourself a drink. Let's check this out.
By the beginning of the year 45 BCE, Rome's dictator, consul, Pontifex Maximus, and fledgling authoritarian Julius Caesar received word that Rome's two Spanish provinces had fallen into enemy hands. The enemy was none other than Caesar's old right-hand man, Titus Labienus. Caesar and Labienus were exactly the same age, and may have known each other as far back as childhood, although this is impossible to prove definitively. By the time the two burst onto the political scene in the 60s BCE, they were already close friends and stalwart political allies. Caesar was always the most charismatic of the two, and when he was elected consul for the year 59, he helped Labienus get elected to the lesser office of praetor for the same year. When their terms were up, Caesar secured for himself a prestigious governorship, and as his first order of business, he asked Labienus to come along as his number two. Labienus accepted, even though he was qualified for a province in his own right. The two men spent the next decade bringing Gaul under the Roman yoke. This would forever be Caesar's greatest military achievement, and many would argue, in fact I think I would argue, that Labienus deserves at least 50% of the credit for this. When the Civil War kicked off, Labienus shocked everybody by—
Before they get into that, you gotta think about it. There was at least one moment where Caesar was struggling down south. Remember, and Labienus was killing it up north. He was taking it all over. And then basically they had to regroup just so that Caesar can win down here. He was definitely a big part of it for sure.
By siding with the Roman Senate. We don't have a clear picture of why he made this decision, but it appears to have come from a genuine place. Caesar extended many olive branches, but Labienus would slap down every offer. Over the next several years, Labienus became a zealous defender of Republican institutions. And now, after the deaths of Pompey and Cato and Scipio and countless others, Labienus was finally the leader of the Pompeian faction, or what was left of it. He knew exactly what to do. Unrest in the Spanish provinces meant that they still required a strong military presence, and many of these legions had spent some time on the Pompeian side of the Civil War. As Caesar's legions back in Rome became rich beyond their wildest dreams, the Spanish legions became more and more unhappy. For Labienus, conditions were perfect. After joining forces with two of Pompey's sons, Labienus launched an attack on the Spanish provinces. Resistance was extremely light, and before too long, entire legions were coming over to Labienus' side in droves. Labienus then began to raise additional legions from local recruits, which proved to be extremely successful. According to estimates, Labienus raised something like 13 legions in basically no time at all. This was huge. It was more than Caesar faced at Pharsalus under Pompey or at Thapsus under Scipio. But the
What you got to remember too is, like they just said, it really just, I guess it goes to show you how unhappy the Spanish provinces were, and not just the soldiers, the people. I mean, if they're able to raise that many legions that quickly, it's impressive.
more important fact is this. Caesar knew that unlike Pompey and Scipio, Labienus was his equal. His astounding momentum in Spain put the entire political order at risk. The stakes could not have been higher. Caesar had no choice but to intervene immediately. He left Lepidus, his new number 2, in charge of the city of Rome, and departed with whatever legions happened to be nearby. Since he had just retired a massive number of soldiers, this worked out to approximately 8 legions, a mere 60% of what Labienus had at his disposal. This was not great, but time was of the essence and it would have to do. It's worth mentioning here that Caesar recruited as an aide-de-camp his late sister's grandson, the 17-year-old Gaius Octavius. The boy didn't really do anything on the campaign, but like I said, it's worth mentioning. There, I've mentioned it. Consider it mentioned. Before going any further, let me make it clear that this campaign is pretty badly sourced. The only contemporaneous account is anonymous and borderline unreadable. Historians have been able to piece together a plausible account of what happened, but be forewarned that the evidence for any of this is pretty thin. But nevertheless, here we go. Caesar and his 8 legions set a breakneck pace and were able to make it to Spain in record time. When they arrived, Labienus and the Pompeians were in the middle of besieging one of Spain's last holdouts, the town of Iulia. As we know, Caesar was outnumbered. He didn't want to risk attacking an entrenched position if he could avoid it, so instead he marched on Corduba, one of Spain's largest cities, hoping that the Pompeians would abandon their siege and give chase. The plan mostly worked. A small detachment stayed behind to continue the siege, but Labienus and the rest of the army moved to intercept Caesar. Labienus launched hit-and-run attacks, but Caesar refused to face his enemy head-on. The two sides slowly settled into a weird standoff. Caesar seized a few nearby towns for supplies, but other than that, nobody seemed too eager to initiate battle. Over the winter, the Pompeian army saw some defections. These were mostly from local Spanish soldiers, who were understandably more concerned with the fate of Spanish towns than they were with some Roman political dispute. Labienus sought to minimize future defections by pulling back to the town of Munda. From here, he would plan his next move.
I wonder how many actually defected. What percentage? Did they give him enough for to take a legion away from Labienus and give it to Caesar? I mean, how many was it?
Labienus eventually decided that defections and the threat of future Caesarian reinforcements meant that a prolonged campaign was no longer in his interest. This cat-and-mouse stuff had to end. He found a good defensive hill near the town of Munda and planted his army there. Now all he had to do was trick Caesar into attacking. Caesar led his army to the town of Munda and approached Labienus's hill. For the first time, Caesar and Labienus faced each other as equals. The future of Rome hung in the balance. Caesar moved his cavalry to the left and his most experienced legions to the wings. Then Caesar did exactly what Labienus wanted him to do. He attacked uphill. There were no clever tricks or maneuvers, just each side pushing against the other, sweating and bleeding and dying over every inch of ground gained or lost. It was muddy and brutal and exhausting, and it went on all day. As the sun approached the horizon, the two sides were basically at a stalemate. Perhaps Caesar expected Labienus's army to collapse within the first minutes of fighting.
How?
If so, that had been a mistake.
Yeah, I mean, it's clear that there's not much information on this battle because, I mean, is that really true? Caesar attacked uphill? I mean, come on. Caesar's going to attack uphill with less troops? That just seems so stupid, so arrogant. And it's not like he doesn't know that this is a good general. Labienus, he knows what Labienus can do. It doesn't make any sense to me.
The Caesarians were now fully committed, outnumbered and outpositioned. Caesar could see the writing on the wall. He jumped down off his horse, grabbed a sword and a shield, and charged the Pompeian line. He probably didn't actually see any combat, but that doesn't matter. The soldiers got the message. Win or lose, Caesar would share their fate.
Hmm.
And then, on the Caesarian right, one of Caesar's veteran legions broke through the Pompeian line. Labienus personally took command of a legion that he had been holding in reserve, and charged Caesar's right. Equilibrium was restored. But
Okay.
then, Caesar's cavalry broke through on his left. Labienus was out of reserves. The cavalry
Oh.
swung around and encircled Labienus's position. The Pompeian army collapsed. Labienus was killed in the fighting.
I can't believe that that's how it ended. They had the hill, they had a bigger army. Very interesting, very good just leader, you know? Wow. Very experienced leader, you know? It's
After the
incredible.
battle, Caesar ordered his soldiers to search the battlefield for Labienus's body. They found it. Caesar buried his old friend with full honors in a field just outside the town of Munda.
That'd be cool to go and see if there's any record of it at all, or of the general's
Caesar
face.
would later say that he had often fought for victory, but at Munda, he fought for his life. In the coming weeks, one of Pompey's sons would be captured and executed. The other son would evade capture for another decade, but it's safe to say that the Battle of Munda basically put the final nail into the Pompeian coffin. The
Okay.
Civil War was over. For real this time.
Yeah, you've said it two other times. Oh,
All of Caesar's rivals had been defeated. At this moment, he was perhaps the most powerful person on the planet.
yeah, I believe it.
He would be dead in a year.
Jesus. All right, well, I think that's about it. The next one, you guys, tomorrow's video is actually titled "Caesar as King?" question mark. Uh, Basically, it's that year leading up to his assassination. Everything that he did, everything like that. I'm really excited to kind of see it broken down, and then to see what happens after he's assassinated and the transformations that happen into the empire. You know. Um, anyway, hope you guys dug it. Till next time, I love y'all. This is Ace is High, and I'm out.